Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're plunging into a topic that, well, it might sound really specific at first,
Yeah.
the global natural casing market.
Ah,
Now, we're talking about, the natural membranes, usually from animal intestines, used for sausages, hot dogs, that kind of thing.
right. The traditional stuff, highly prized for that texture, the snap.
Exactly. And look, before you think this is just for, deep food industry folks, we promise we're going deeper. We want to uncover what's really happening globally here.
And we've got a fantastic source to do that. It's comprehensive sales revenue data from Cognitive Market Research.
Okay.
It gives us solid numbers from 2021, which is great, but also projections for 2025 and forecasts all the way out to 2033.
So a good long view then.
A really good long view, and it covers key regions, key countries, really paints a global picture.
Perfect. So our mission today, let's pull out the most important insights, find the surprising bits, and help you understand the trends, the implications of this, well, seemingly niche market.
But significant.
But clearly significant. And as we go through this, maybe think about what it tells you about, wider global consumption, food trends, maybe even tradition.
Yeah, good question.
Okay, let's get into it.
All right, so globally, back in 2021, the natural casing market had sales revenue of just under $1.9 billion.
$1.9 billion. Okay, that's a pretty solid starting point.
It is. It shows there's real enduring demand for these products.
And it's not stopping there, is it? The report projects it climbing.
Definitely not stopping. It's projected to hit about $2.17 billion in 2025.
Okay.
And then grow quite a bit more, reaching an impressive $2.9 billion by 2033.
Wow. So nearly $3 billion by 2033. What's really telling, I think, is that consistent growth rate they mentioned.
The CAGR, yeah.
Mm.
Compound annual growth rate. It's pegged at 3.7%.
Okay, 3.7%. That's not, explosive, but it's steady, relentless almost. What does that consistency tell us?
It really speaks volumes about how ingrained this market is. It's not a fad, right? It reflects some fundamental dietary habits, culinary traditions, if we look in North America, for instance.
Okay, yeah, let's break it down regionally. North America.
So North America was valued at just over $402 million in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
It's expected to reach around $451 million by 2025, and then climb over $566 million by 2033.
And the growth rate there?
Steady. The CAGR is just under 2.9%.
Okay, so a bit slower than the global average, but still consistent upward movement.
Exactly. And within North America, the U.S. is clearly the leader. Sales projected to jump from about $323 million in 2021 to nearly $450 million by 2033.
Right. And Canada and Mexico are growing too, just on a smaller scale.
That's right. Consistent increases there as well. Robust growth across the board, really.
Okay. But if North America is robust, then Europe seems like the historical heavyweight here, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. If you want to see where the real gravity of this market has traditionally been, you look across the Atlantic.
It's not just big. The report makes it sound like the undisputed titan. What does that tell us about, well, centuries of making sausages and charcuterie?
It's fascinating, isn't it? Europe was sized at a substantial $795 million back in 2021.
Wow. Compared to North America's $400 million. Big difference.
Huge difference. And it's projected to increase to over $908 million by 2025, and then hit an impressive $1.19 billion by 2033.
Over $1 billion just in Europe.
Just in Europe. And it's not just the size. It really speaks volumes about that enduring appeal of traditional, artisanal products.
Yeah.
Sausages, cured meats, all those regional specialties. It suggests European consumers are perhaps consistently willing to pay a bit more for natural ingredients.
Maybe even as a sort of counter trend to all the highly processed stuff out there.
That could definitely be part of it.
Think about that. Europe accounting for such a massive chunk. It makes me picture those local butcher shops, maybe in Germany or Italy, where the casing quality is just as crucial as the filling. It feels like it's about more than just industry numbers. It's deeply embedded tradition.
It really seems to be. And you see that in the country breakdowns. Germany is forecast to grow impressively from about 158 million to over 255 million by 2033.
Big jump.
In the UK, from over 90 million to nearly 143 million. But it's also the widespread growth.
Yeah.
France, Italy, Spain, even smaller markets like Luxembourg showing consistent demand.
Right. It's not just one or two countries carrying it. It's across the board in Europe.
Precisely. Deeply embedded demand across the whole continent's culinary landscape.
Okay, so Europe is the bedrock, the traditional giant.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
its culinary landscape.
Okay, so Europe is the bedrock, the traditional giant. But where's the sort of future excitement? Where's the fastest growth happening?
Well, if Europe is the bedrock, then Asia-Pacific is undeniably the future engine.
Ah, yeah.
This region isn't just growing, well, exploding might be a strong word, but the growth is really significant.
Tell me more. Numbers.
Total revenue there was about $364 million in 2021, expected to hit around $440 million by 2025.
Okay, still smaller than North America or Europe in total size currently.
Currently, yes. But then it's forecasted at an incredible $642 million by 2033.
Getting closer to Europe's 2021 number.
Exactly. And what's truly astonishing here is the CAGR. Remember, the global average was 3.7%.
Yeah.
Asia-Pacific's is a notable 4.839%.
Wow, nearly 5%. That's significantly higher than anywhere else we've looked at.
By quite a margin is the highest we see in the report.
That kind of growth. It's more than just a number, right? It feels like a signal of a real shift happening. What's driving that? Is it just population growth or something deeper?
It seems to be multiple factors. Population is part of it, of course, but it's more than that. China is leading the charge.
Naturally.
Projected growth from about 114 million to over 206 million. And India is basically more than doubling its market from around 38 million to over 76 million by 2033.
Okay, so huge growth in the two giants. What does that point to?
It really highlights shifts in dietary habits.
Mm.
You often see meat consumption rise with disposable income and urbanization, and that seems to be happening.
Right.
But it also points towards the industrialization of meat processing locally. They're adopting more global standards for things like casings, maybe moving from very traditional small-scale methods to larger production.
Interesting. So it's development and changing tastes combined.
I think so.
Yeah.
And you see significant figures, strong growth, also from Japan, South Korea, Australia, and across Southeast Asia, too.
Mm.
Their economies develop, consumer tastes evolve. It fuels this surge.
Okay, so Asia Pacific is the one to watch for sheer growth speed. Let's continue our tour. What about South America? How does that region fit in?
South America shows that same consistent, steady growth pattern we've seen elsewhere, just on a different scale.
Right.
The market there was valued around $137 million in 2021,
Mm-hmm.
increasing to $160 million in 2025, and projected to reach over $215 million by 2033.
Okay, any standouts there?
Brazil's a major player, definitely.
Oh.
Projected to jump from about 54 million to over 83 million. But you also see healthy, consistent expansion in places like Argentina, Colombia, Peru, Chile. It indicates a steadily developing market.
Right, and the Middle East, another region showing that upward trend.
Yes, exactly. Steady upward trend there, too. The Middle East market hit almost $100 million in 2021,
Okay.
rising to around $116 million in 2025, and expected to reach nearly $157.5 million by 2033.
And key countries driving that.
Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and the UAE are the main contributors mentioned, all showing significant increases, which, again, probably reflects evolving food landscapes and more demand for diverse meat products.
Okay. And finally, our global tour needs to touch on Africa. How's the natural casing story playing out there?
Africa represents perhaps the more emerging market space in this context. Growth is visible, but starting from a smaller base.
Numbers.
Saw growth from about $80 million in 2021, projected to climb over $97 million in 2025, and reach nearly $130 million by 2033.
Still growing steadily then.
Still growing steadily. Nigeria and South Africa are noted as the primary drivers, both forecasting strong increases. And again, this often signals a growing formal meat processing industry, maybe a shift towards more structured food production.
Okay. So if we kind of pull back now and look at the whole global picture again,
Yeah.
what's the main headline?
The main headline is really that consistent, quiet ascent.
Yeah, quite ascent feels right. We saw it grow from just under 1.9 billion globally in 2021,
Projected to hit nearly 2.9 billion by 2033.
all underpinned by that robust 3.7% CAGR. It's not speculative, is it? It feels fundamental.
Exactly. It's a steady fundamental climb. And just to recap those key regional points,
Yeah, let's summarize.
Europe remains the undisputed largest market. That really shows the power of long-standing culinary traditions.
Tradition matters.
But Asia-Pacific is the absolute standout for growth rate. That CAGR nearing 4.9% is really something.
The engine for future growth, as you said.
Right. And beyond those two, the fact that we see consistent, steady expansion across North America, South America, the Middle East, Africa, it tells a story of broad, resilient global demand. It touches almost everywhere.
What really stands out to me listening to all this is how these detailed numbers from what seems like such a specific market,
Yeah.
they actually connect really powerfully to our understanding of bigger things. Global economics, consumer behavior.
Definitely.
This isn't some niche product fighting for relevance. It feels like a deeply ingrained part of a growing global food economy. Surprisingly resilient, culturally significant.
Which really raises an important question, I think, for you listening.
Yeah.
Given this steady, widespread growth, right?
Yeah.
Across such different regions, different cultures,
Mm-hmm.
what does this tell you about the enduring role of traditional food products?
Hmm.
Or maybe the resilience of certain culinary traditions, even in our fast-changing, modernizing world?
That's a great point. It seems some things, even with all the new food tech and trends, some things just continue to be deeply valued, fundamentally important.
Something to think about. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into a world you might not often think about, but one that has a really surprising impact on what we eat.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the fascinating market of natural casings. Now, we've pulled together all the key insights from the sources you shared with us, and honestly, what we found is pretty unexpected.
Yeah, it often is with these niche markets.
Exactly. It's shaped by forces you might, never really consider. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yep.
So to kick us off, maybe give us the quick version.
Yeah.
What exactly are natural casings?
Well, put simply, they're the prepared intestines of animals like hogs, sheep, or cattle.
Okay.
They've been used for centuries, mostly in making sausages, acting as this edible, natural cover. But the key thing...
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.
acting as this edible, natural cover. But the key thing is they're not just a container.
Right.
They're actually integral to the texture, the flavor, that whole eating experience.
That's a really clear way to put it. So is this just a steady old market, or are there new things driving demand? Because the material we looked at really highlights a big rise in demand for traditional sort of artisanal sausages.
Yeah, definitely.
It seems like people are actively looking for that genuine texture and flavor, something maybe synthetic options don't quite deliver.
That's a huge part of it.
And then there's just the broader global increase in meat production and eating processed meats generally. That must provide a solid base.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating here is how natural casings are really tapping into this bigger consumer shift, this preference for natural and clean label products.
Ah, the clean label trend again.
Exactly. People want ingredients they recognize, things that feel less processed. Natural casings fit that perfectly. It aligns with this desire for transparency, maybe healthier options, especially in those premium markets.
Like North America and Europe.
Precisely. Places where gourmet quality is really valued, and natural casings are almost like a badge of honor, a mark of superior culinary appeal.
Okay, so demand sounds strong, driven by this desire for authenticity, but it can't all be smooth sailing, right?
Mhm.
This market must face some pretty unique challenges. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, absolutely. Big challenges. One major issue is, well, where they come from. They're heavily reliant on animal inputs, hogs, sheep, cattle.
Right.
So their availability, their cost, it's super vulnerable to swings in the livestock markets. Animal diseases, feed costs, it all impacts the casing supply.
Makes sense. What
Then there's shelf life. Natural casings just don't last as long as synthetic ones. They spoil easier.
Okay, so that means more complex handling.
Yeah, specialized handling, constant refrigeration all the way through the supply chain. That adds cost and complexity. Plus, the production itself is very labor-intensive.
Ah, not easy to scale up then.
Not easily, no. It impacts scalability and adds to operational costs. And then, of course, there's the competition.
From synthetic alternatives.
Right. Things like collagen casings, they're often animal-derived too, but highly processed for consistency, and cellulose casings, which are plant-based and usually peeled off after cooking.
And they offer advantages for big producers.
They do. Consistency, they're generally cheaper, and they have a much longer shelf life. Very attractive for large-scale industrial processors. It definitely raises this important question. How do you balance that tradition with the need for modern efficiency?
So, given those hurdles, how is this traditional industry adapting? Are they innovating? Our sources suggest they are, particularly around preservation.
Yeah, that's key. There's a real focus on improving preservation techniques. Think new kinds of packaging, better storage methods, things that make them easier to handle and ship, extending that shelf life.
Okay, tackling the logistics head on.
Exactly. And we're also seeing, that rise of gourmet and specialty sausages just continuing
Yeah.
in restaurants, in high-end retail.
Places where natural is a selling point.
Absolutely. Where natural casings are seen as that mark of authenticity, of quality. Think about a really good hot dog or bratwurst with that perfect snap.
Oh, yes, that snap.
That's often the natural casing doing its job, something synthetics often struggle to replicate quite the same way.
And another big piece mentioned in the sources is this increasing focus on ethical sourcing and traceability.
Very important. Consumers and regulators, too, they want more transparency. Where did this come from? How was it produced? That's becoming crucial.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture.
Well, it's really about these global shifts in diet and values. We're seeing expansion into emerging markets, think Asia, Latin America.
Where meat consumption is growing.
Right. Growing meat consumption, plus more adoption of Western-style diets. It's opening up significant new growth potential for natural casings there. It's this really interesting mix of old traditions meeting global modernization.
So there you have it, the surprisingly complex world of natural casings. It's a market shaped by this fascinating blend of tradition, changing consumer tastes, and some clever innovation. A niche, maybe, but clearly a vital part of our food system.
And it leaves us with a really interesting thought for the future of food, doesn't it? How will we continue to balance this desire for natural authenticity with the demands of industrial efficiency in what we eat? Where does that balance land?
Exactly. A great question to ponder. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Maybe next time you're enjoying a really good sausage, you'll think about the unexpected market forces behind it. So what does this all mean for you? Perhaps just a new perspective on your next meal.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.